So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Team Coaching Boutique. This is our session on an introduction to team coaching. We'll try and keep it interactive if we can, and we'll do a few introductions. The first few slides are contextual, but in all my experience, we find that very important. I will try and whip through those fairly quickly, and then we'll get into the meat of the topic, which obviously is team coaching. So, moving on. We're going to cover here, this is the things we're going to cover. It's not in a specific order. You guys can obviously read faster than I can talk, so I'm just going to leave that up for a bit. But these are the elements, as we said, of team coaching. We're going to take you on a bit of a journey through there. And at the end, we're going to look at the return on investment, and we're going to talk a bit about the process, and we'll spend some time doing that. So who we are. So what I'm going to do is get everybody to introduce themselves. Today we've got myself, the founder of Team Coaching Boutique, and Siam, who's our principal, and Deborah, who's a senior associate. So my background is engineering, manufacturing, and latterly corporate consulting. Led the UK arm of a corporate consulting group for a number of years, and then set up my own coaching consulting business about 4 or 5 years ago. And this is the incarnation of some collaborative work that we're going to start now. So over to you, Deb.
Yes, good morning. So my name is Deborah Russell. I'm an international executive coach, and I'm based in the west of Paris, actually in France. So I am involved in team coaching in some of the corporates in Paris, and I specialize in coaching specifically in difficult and challenging relationships within teams.
Thank you, Debbie. Siam.
Hey, I'm Siham Cyrene. I am also an executive coach. I work with leaders in managing and setting the expectations and the culture within their organization. I do quite a bit of culture work with organizations that goes from the top down and across organizations. And invariably that involves working with teams, observing and supporting them as well.
Thank you, Siham. So we'll move on. Obviously, there aren't too many of us available today, but what I thought we'd do is try and just talk a bit about what the elements are for a sustainable and growing business. The world is changing rapidly at the moment. COVID has accelerated that, but the change had already started. And we think that, and this is a common belief, and not just us, but other very senior and accomplished coaches within the International Coaching Federation, which I'll talk a bit more about later on, is that team coaching is the way forward. There are a number of executive coaches out there. We've all do it. We've done one-to-one coaching. There are a lot more internal coaches now, but organizations are really beginning to see the value of coaching and team coaching as part of that, because we can start to break down some of the barriers that teams may or may not have, particularly in very hostile environments. And Debbie alluded to already, she's worked in that area. I've also worked in the area of hostile environments, and I know Siam, based on her experience too, has had some very challenging engagements, and that is the power of coaching. So we'll move on. This is the current business context that we're in at the moment. I'm not going to go through all these points. You can read again. Brexit is real at the moment. At this point in time, they're trying to do a deal, but there are other factors as well. What's the company culture you've got in the moment? Is the company culture going to support the objectives that you need to have a successful business? And then that goes back to the point of sustainability again, right? What technology does your company invest in? I think it's now becoming very, very clear that you have to embrace technology, whether it be computer systems or whether it be robotics. I was on a panel event yesterday for the Institute of Directors, and we were talking about how people are going to have to come to terms with not just automated tills in the supermarkets, which are now with us, but working alongside robots. People are going to have to think about upskilling, etc. There's going to be some more challenges. There's going to be relationship problems with different people and everything else. So that's very, very important. Also, there is less internal resource as well as organizations become leaner. We used to have HR departments and extensive training departments. Now a lot of that is outsourced. So hopefully that will produce some of the context that supports what we're going to try and do today. So thank you. The need for change. Again, it's clearly stated here. There are external factors which we've touched on already. We have to drive some level of organizational change, because even as what might be a financially successful organization now may not be a financially successful organization tomorrow, because the world is moving around them. Again, I was on a webinar yesterday with Professor Peter Hawkins, who was talking about his coaching journey. He's one of the, and you can research him, he's one of the great global coaching gurus. And his I guess, measure of a successful business going forward was, is that organization learning faster than the environment around it? Because we are in this VUCA world, this rapid, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. This also means, as well as, changing your internal processes, we're going to have to do a level of personal change. Those processes work with people, right? And people are going to have to people are going to have to push their personal boundaries. And as we know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? If you look at historic Japanese culture, everybody thinks that it was there, it supported the manufacturing industry because of the Zen culture. That was a factor. But actually, post-Second World War, Japan was really struggling financially and also for physical resource. So all their lean and agile methodology, where it emanated from, was driven by a need to produce and support the economy. Next slide, please. We're not going to cover this in too much detail. These were the pre-webinar questions. We'll go back to those a bit later on, but I think they're fair questions. We would long-term, like to get people's feedback. What would attract people to the concept of team coaching? We've touched on that a bit already. What is your personal experiences or team experiences with team coaching facilitation? And why do you think team coaching might benefit your organization? So here we are. There's a few definitions here. The ICF definition of coaching, that's the International Coaching Federation. And all of us here today, we are all internationally accredited coaches at PCC level from the ICF. They provide us some wonderful support. So the key thing here in this definition is about maximizing personal potential. And it's the client, it's the coachee that maximizes their potential. A coach doesn't do that. They create the atmosphere and provide the support and the challenge to allow individuals to do that. So that's at an individual level. And the similar principles apply to team coaching as well, and we'll cover that in a bit more detail. We've also listed here a few of the key principles of what coaching is about. The first one is around non-judgment. So I'm going to throw that over to Siham and get your reflections on non-judgment as well, because you've worked with some emerging organizations at the moment, and I know that's critical to the work that you do.
Non-judgment in what specific regard, John?
In the way that we deal with clients, right? We take it, coaches take it from an agnostic perspective when we're dealing with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a space that I think perhaps people have hesitation about initially. Is I'm going to be opening up to you, and can I trust you with that? Because we all already have our own internal voice, right? That's doing some of that judging. And so to share that with another person, sometimes, and I'm sure we've all experienced that these are things that they've never said to another living soul. It's an articulation of stuff that's going on in their heads. And so one of the things that's really key to our ability as coaches, and something that is massively emphasized in our training, is that we're holding spaces for people, and we have to allow people to express, and we actually actively invite people to express even contradictory thoughts, difficult thoughts, in order to get them on the table, because sometimes just getting them out removes the obstacle itself. So it is a really, really key part of the experience for people.
Thank you, Siham. Yeah, that's critical. I'm not going to cover all the points in this list because we have a few time constraints here. But I think the key one as well here is number 4. Coaching is an evolving process. It's not a static process. And again, we'll cover that when we talk a bit more about team coaching. It does require active and intuitive listening. Everybody might have heard the expression, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Well, that really applies in coaching. It's very important to listen because, as it said earlier, you have to serve the client. So I'm going to hand over to Deborah briefly here to talk about personal energy and how that influences the performance.
Yeah, so anyone's personal performance is linked to their personal energy. So really what that means in terms of personal energy is how are you feeling at that particular moment in time where you're performing in front of other people, and what level of energy are you coming across at? And you would only know that if you're functioning at a fairly high level of awareness and consciousness, and if you're conscious of what lenses you're looking out of in that particular moment. So this is really, really very important, and it's for your coach to be able to make you more aware of how conscious you are on a day-to-day basis and how you're coming across.
Thank you very much, Debbie. We'll move on now. So what I'm showing here is the left brain, right brain, which we believe as coaches is a fundamental coaching skill. And just to put a caveat here, is a lot of psychologists now talk about the fact that the left and the right brain don't actually exist. But it is a really good metaphor for understanding how we deal with processes and how we deal with emotions. The right brain is very much comes from the heart. And as Peter said yesterday, we should all coach from our source, not necessarily from effort, and is very important. The left brain typically has been attributed to the cognitive skills, the processing and the logic. Understanding these as a coach is very, very important because you need to know as a coach when you should be doing that. And it's not all about the heart. There are times when we need to be using our cognitive skills as well. So I'll throw this one out there briefly to everybody. And this is a question I ask in a lot of the workshops that I run. If you were a coach and you were engaging with a number of people, which one of these would you use first? So I'm going to throw that over to you, Debbie, if that's okay.
Well, I tend to use my right brain very much so with my coaching, because that way I can use my intuitive skills and really focus in and log into what's going on for my client. The processing comes later, but I'm very, very in touch with my feminine side, and I encourage my clients as well to look at that as well and really bring out their intuitive skills. So yeah,
that's great, Debbie. I mean, I tend to use the right brain first because it's all about relationship building, right? If you dive straight into cognitive stuff, you can turn people off because you've not built up that relationship. So Siham, have you got any reflections on that? Because I know that you've worked in some very tough environments, again with quite young people as well, because you mentor startups too.
Yes, this is an interesting one, isn't it? For sure, tapping into the right brain is a training we go through to tap into. It's not always a natural one for some of us, and I know I work a lot with technology companies, and there are a lot of process thinkers in that space who are very comfortable talking about process and things rather than their feelings. And so for me, I have to do a lot of bridging the gap. So a lot of how I reach people is sometimes initially through process and getting them to think about things in terms of risk or impact. And then draw them into that conversation about their feelings for it, because they're definitely there and in the mix, and but they may not be as aware of articulating them or what they mean and how they might be affecting their decisions. So just raising their awareness about their feelings becomes part of that for sure.
That's a really important point, Siham. And I, again, having been in engineering and manufacturing, I've had similar experiences. And as what we do at coaches, you don't start from a position of A or B. What you realize is you have to meet in the middle, because when you meet in the middle, if there is a gap, that's how you can start the process. If you don't meet in the middle, it won't happen. So great. So Debbie's kindly driving the slides for us today. So perhaps we can just move on to the next slide.